All right, so external references. Now, one kind of nice thing about external references is that you won't be drawing very much, honestly, for this assignment, right? External references is not so much a drawing technique as how to manage your files professionally, right? And so, let's see, let's go to 1310, drawings. Oh, I am recording.
Oh, it didn't show up.
Yep, I know, I popped it over there. But it's good to remind me, thank you.
Are you linked?
Oh,
Maybe that's,
there you go.
I didn't see the icon.
Okay.
There
There we
is.
go. There we
There
go.
it is.
Okay. It works. It works. All right. So under CAD Common, I've got these several files. They're all Xref files. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy those files. And I'm just going to paste them on my desktop under, I have a folder for AutoCAD somewhere. Well, I thought I did. Maybe it's on my other screen. Nope. Huh. I thought I had oh. AutoCAD, there it is, okay. All right, so I'm going to create a new folder here and I'm going to call it Xref Practice. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste that in there. Okay. So let's talk about Xrefs and let's talk about how we work with professional files. But to do that, I'm going to have to draw a few things on the board, so hopefully you can hear me still on the recording here. Erase this. Now, when you're kind of working maybe in a small firm where there's not a lot of maybe file sharing or a lot of people working on the same files, you know, you might use a smaller version of this or this method to a lesser extent. But when you're working in a large office and if there's any type of file sharing, you're going to use external references to manage your files, okay? And the reason is, we'll just start off with reason number one, right? So let's say that we have a server here, which we do, right? And the server is called CAD Common, okay? So when you're working in an office, you do have a server, right? And it's called something, and you have a file with all of the folders, the project folders you're working on. And whenever you go to work, okay, you go and you open up the project you're working on, and you open up the drawing folder, and you've got a ton of files in here, okay? And let's say that Jake over here is working on a file. We're working on a project together, right? And he's working on this file called AIA layers, right? So you have it open and you're working on it. But, you know, I had gone out and I talked with the client that day and we discussed some changes that needed to be made to the project. So I came back to work and I instead of conveying them verbally, I was just going to go into the file and change them, right? Make the changes so that everybody knew what was going on, right? So if you have the file open and I go to open the file, it'll say, hey, wait a minute, right? This just says read only for other reasons, but it would say, hey, you know, Jake Bowers has this file open and it's locked for editing. And I could say, okay, would you like to open it read only? Yes, great. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just make the changes and then when I'm done, I'll save over the top of the original, right? But the problem with that is that all the work that Jake has done, when I save over the top of his file, it's erased, right? So the main problem with, not a problem, but an issue with AutoCAD is people working together, essentially, right? So you can't be working in the same file at the same time, which is totally different than Revit, right? We work in the same model in Revit. Now, this problem of having the same file open, it just really kind of exists, but Xrefs kind of help mitigate that problem, okay? So there's problem number one. You know, one person has information that needs to be added. Another person is working on maybe the reflected ceiling plan, but this first person needs to be able to make the changes and that second person needs to know about the changes to finish their work appropriately. Right? So let's talk about how Xrefs can kind of solve that, okay? All right, so we have base files and we have sheet files from now on, okay? Base files and sheet files, they use each other to function, and I guess maybe the best way to differentiate between the two is kind of in the naming system. But base files are going to be named things like X-floor plan. okay? Or they're gonna be called X dash elevation or X dash section, okay? And these base files are going to contain template architectural information, right? So that means that, you know, if I have a base file called X floor plan, that file will contain the floor plan, right? And just the floor plan. It won't contain any dimensions or other kind of identifying annotation, okay? Which means I can have one called something like X floor plan 02, right? One for every single level in the project, okay? Now these base files, okay, they're going to serve as a template for other work that needs to be done. For example, we're going to have a lot of different plans that we need to generate that use the floor plan as a template. So we're going to have a finished floor plan, we're going to have a reflected ceiling plan, we're going to have a furniture plan, we're going to have a dimension plan, we're going to have a general overall floor plan. So in kind of just a basic set of drawings, we have maybe 6 or 7 floor plans, right? It's a little overwhelming, right? So we're going to have 6 or 7 floor plans. One has the ceiling information on it, one has the flooring information on it, one has just the furniture, one has the rooms with the room names and general information but no dimensions, right? You guys get the idea. The commonality between all of those is what this floor plan looks like, right? The basic outline of the room, essentially, or the building, okay? And then the difference between those different floor plans is kind of specific information that we put into the sheet, okay? So the base file is the template architecture, and the sheet file is where you do specific work. So sheets are named things like AE 101 or AE 102, right? So the way that this sort of works, we have this Xref functionality between these two things. And essentially the way these work is that we take the floor plan and we Xref it into this drawing, okay? And it creates a link from this file to that file. So I can view this file in that file. I can only view it, I can't really edit it, right? And then in the sheet file, I do specific work. Okay? And I have AE 102. Maybe this one is the whatever floor plan, and this is the finished plan, right? And this is just the regular old floor plan, right? So if I have the floor plan and the finished plan, again, I need to see this first floor plan, so I Xref this into that file, and then I do my specific work. We'll call it SW, specific work, okay? And if I had another sheet, like AE 103 or whatever, maybe this was the dimension plan, in plan, right? Again, I would need to use this floor plan as a template, right? But then I would do sheet specific work, okay? So I would take this base file, I would Xref it into my sheet file, and then I would add my dimensions to the sheet file, okay? The same thing can happen for, we have a lot more. So AE 104, 105, and 106, right? But instead of using this floor plan, I want to use this floor plan. So then I Xref that into there, goes into there, and then into that file.
So really your base files are your template files to create all of your drawings for the project.
Right, exactly. Yep, yep. And then I do my sheet specific work. So the system works, it does and it doesn't work in that we still can't have that same file open at the same time and work in it, right? But it works in that, generally speaking, one person or just a few people may go into the floor plan at different times and make changes, right? But then all the other work that needs to happen, like the floor plan, or the finished floor plan, the furniture plan, the reflected ceiling plan, other people can view this and look at it and use it to draw, but they have these separate files that then they can be working in, right? And the nice thing about this system is that if I change this, right, then in the sheet file, the person who's working here gets a notification and it says, hey, so-and-so has changed the base file, the Xref, would you like to update it? You say, yeah, sure. And then, you know, you hit save and it updates the way that this looks in all of these different files.
Will it tell you what has been updated?
No, figure that out. No, it doesn't say, oh, the walls have changed or whatever, but it will be pretty evident if you have, you know, for example, drawn the ceiling in and then the project shrinks by 5 feet, you'll look at it and say, oh, well, because the ceiling will still be drawn, right?
Yeah.
But the base file will have shrunk in, so you'll have to adjust your work.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the nice thing about Revit, right? It automatically, well, not automatically, but it updates more of that.
Okay.
Anyway. All right, so this is kind of the general idea behind these Xrefs. This is on a small scale like we're going to be doing today. It's a little bit hard to recognize how nice this system actually works, right? Because you're going to be taking drawings, you're going to be Xrefing them together into sheets on a small scale in here. And the way the system works is that if you need to make a change, you have to open this file, close it, save it, and then it's reflected in this file, okay? But we only have like 3 or 4 files. And so it's kind of like you're going in a little tiny loop, thinking it would just be easier to have 1 or 2 files I was changing. But when you have 400 sheets, right, and the floor plan is in all 400 of those sheets, right, and somebody says, you need to change all the doors in the floor plan, you only have to do it in one place, and it updates in every single sheet that it's attached to, right? So even though you have to go into every sheet and make the alteration, at least the original change has integrity, right? You changed it, it's correct, and then it's reflected in every instance of that floor plan, okay? So we have with Xrefs, we are allowed to work in kind of multiple files at the same time, right? You're allowed to see changes in the base file immediately in an Xref. If the file has never been opened and you make a change, when you open it, it does reflect that change, so you don't have to refresh it or anything, okay? One other really nice thing about this external reference system is that these base files, they are attached to the sheet file in that they are kind of like paper clipped to them, right? So if I have a sheet of paper and it's maybe translucent, I can take the floor plan, put it behind it, paper clip it, lay it down, and I can view it, right? So these 2 items are kind of paper clipped together, which is different than one is inserted into another, okay? And the difference is that if I take a floor plan, which I could compare to a block, right, and I insert it into my AE 101 as opposed to just attaching it, it comes in fully. So all of its layers come in, all of its blocks come in, all of its weird things that you've attached to it somehow and you don't even know come in. If there's a virus in that file, it comes in, right? So these Xrefs, they're attached. All right?
That's kind of the paperclip.
What's that?
Is that kind of the paperclip?
That's the paperclip, yeah. So they're attached, right? We'll draw a little paperclip, right? I'll write it, not inserted. Okay. All right, so we take the template, we attach it to the sheet, right, which is essentially the same as paper clipping. So I can view this template in all of these different files. I can change it and it updates, right? But the nice thing is that when it's attached, it's just kind of lightly connected, and I can view it and use it, but it remains separate, okay? So that means I can detach it very easily. It also means that things like layers are kept separate. You can view them separately within this file. So if I have a bunch of new layers where I'm drawing the lights, and I'm drawing the reflected ceiling grid, and I'm drawing the projector and the Wi-Fi system thing, right? I can use layers in the sheet to draw those, and because I've Xref these 2 things together, my layers and my floor plan remain separate. So I can maintain some integrity between the 2 files, and I know which file owns what layer system, okay? So it's a pretty good system. One kind of big finicky thing about this system is that it's path-based, right? And a lot of programs are, right? So like if you've ever used Word and you paste an image file into Word and then you take it with you somewhere else and the image file says not found, right? That just means it's path-based and it's looking for that image and it can't find it, right? These are no different. So these are heavily path-based, meaning that if you move them around a lot, the system works, but you get a lot of detachment, meaning this file is looking for that file to view it, but it can't find a path to it, so you can't see it in your drawing, right? So path specific, I guess, means once you create your files, don't move them, don't rename them, don't reorganize and add folders. Don't break the path between here and here, otherwise you won't be able to view them. Okay, and I'll show you what that means. Okay. All right. Let me open up. Close that out. All right. look here. I'm going to close that out. So I have this folder on my desktop called AutoCAD Project. I'm going to open it up, okay? And I have my Xref practice folder here. And you immediately see me organizing my files, right? I put them in my kind of faux project file. I create a folder for them. I place the files I want to use in here, and then I don't move them, right? So kind of up front, you're going to define where they're saved, what they're named, and once you've done that and you've kind of Xref the system all together, you're not going to move them, because if you move them, rename them, or if you delete them, then they won't work, right? And I am super guilty of this because I feel like I'm constantly organizing. I'm like, I've got a way better system now. I'm going to organize my whole server, right? I don't do it as much now because I know what happens. But when I was just learning about this, I would reorganize things and rename them and, you know, move them around. And then I would like, oh, I wonder why these aren't functioning. And it's because I, you know, got too excited about getting my server organized. So make sure that you know, I can't emphasize enough, just name them, keep them in the same spot, right? Don't freak out if you accidentally misnamed them or whatever. All right. Okay, so, oh, one thing, let me just say this before we, I should take a picture of this and post it so everyone who's not here can see it. Sheet names. Okay, we have kind of a system for sheet names that you'll get used to as you start working. But let me just, I'll write this out. So floor plans are the 100 series. Elevations are the 200 series. Sections are the 300 series. And details and enlarged plans, they are the 400 series drawings, right? So what that means is that if I have a floor plan, right, so I did that here, I'm going to name it something like AE 100 or AE 101 or AE 102. AE is kind of like the same thing with the layering system, right? It's the discipline identifier. So AE means architectural. If it had been SE, it would have been structural, right? So we're just identifying whose sheet this is. But AE and 100 would be something like the basement level. 101 would be level 1, 102 level 2, 101 level 1, 102 level 2, right? And you would just kind of progressively increase the numbers, okay? Same thing with the elevations. You'd have AE 200, well, we don't usually start with 201 or 200. 201, AE 202, AE 203. So you'd start with 201, you'd put a couple elevations on there, and then when the page is filled up, you would start going with 202, 203, etc. Okay? So we'll just say that first. So we have a few things we have to do. We have to create a sheet. We have to Xref something into that sheet. And save it and figure out how that all works together, okay? All right, so this is where a blast from your past will come in. The way that we create a sheet, and sorry, I'm gonna open these up real quick and look at them. Make sure that okay, so that's my roof, obviously. We'll open it this way, desktop. Xref, site plan, trees, 1 and 2. Okay, I'm going to get rid of those 2. All right, so we have those 3. We have roof, we have site plan, and we have trees. Okay. And actually, you're going to use these files to generate your assignment, so just so you know. So we have these files, right? And these files, if I open them up, AutoCAD Project, and I open up site plan and trees, right? These are just drawing files that I generated, okay? So here's my site plan. I opened up my template file or a blank AutoCAD file, and using my surveyor units or whatever, I drew my site plan. Drew it, make sure that everything was on the right layer, save it and close it, okay? And then I thought, oh, well, I have some trees that I need to generate, so here are my trees. I drew all my trees, close it, and save it. oh, not save it. And then I have a roof, right? I've drawn my building, and here's my roof, and I've drawn my very complicated roof. Look at that ridge line. It's terrible.
Awful.
Isn't that terrible?
Built a few like that.
Is that terrible, though?
Ivory Homes was the word.
Ugh, man, sorry.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves is crazy roof lines. It's awful. It's awful.
There was a woman that had, my husband sent it to me. It's funny, he's sending me architecture humor, right? But it was like, it was this woman walking around this neighborhood talking about McMansions and making fun. It was a satire, but making fun of their roof lines, right? And so she had a bunch of like, look at this roof line, you know, and there were a bunch of like those like the columns that come up in front and hold like a little flimsy porch covering, and then there's this gigantic roof, you know. So she was talking about, look at those styrofoam columns holding up that gigantic slab of styrofoam on the front, and just analyzing it. It was really funny. I should post it for you guys to watch. But yeah, sorry, that was totally off topic. Anyway, okay, so weird, gigantic, crazy roof system here. But here's my roof, right? So I come in and I draw it and I close it out and I save it, right? And I have my drawings. So essentially by doing that, I have created my base files, okay? So they are called, you know, Xref roof plan, or I usually just kind of abbreviate it like X roof, okay? And I called, see, here we go, organizing. Like, I don't like it saying Xref. I'm just gonna like, I have an Xref things together, so it works, okay. Okay, so I will give it an X designation. Number one, what it does is it sorts them all together, right, in your file structure. So all of the X's, they alphabetize together in your file structure system. But the other thing it does is that it notes it as an Xref, right? So visually you look at this and you can say, oh, there's all my Xrefs, those are my base files, right? So Xrefs, base files, you'll hear that term used back and forth, same thing, okay? So what I need to do now is I need to generate my sheet files that I then Xref those base files into, right? So this is the way that the system always works. We take our base files, we Xref them into the sheet files. It never goes the other direction. It always goes this way, okay? So I need to create my sheet file. Sorry guys, I need to check and make sure to see if anybody's emailed Kevin their files yet. Sorry, I just want to check on it. Send another email. Or I was just making to see if anybody had responded, because I sent them an email through Canvas and asked them to email your files. So,
Yeah, the rebel one's too big, he said, McCabe.
okay, let me send another email. Alright.
Tom says that he's fine,
Okay.
but he might be at work and can't get to it yet, you know what I mean? He's at the district.
Sorry, we are recording, just so you know.
Oh, great, this is used for live purposes here. Or what do they say, this is used for
You may
quality
be-
control?
Quality control. Jameson prefers not to be recorded.
You're recording. That is not good.
Let me see. Okay, sorry guys, we're just trying to get these. Let me... I am going to... This may not work. I'm going to email him again then. 2510.
Does McCabe have Google Drive?
I don't know, but I'm sure that he's got some type of, like whether it's OneDrive or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll give that a few minutes.
Well, they're not done, but you know,
Okay.
they're anxious to get started on the new stuff too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. We'll see how that
I'm
sits.
sorry to rush it, it's like I thought.
That's
it would
okay.
be okay.
Nope, that's okay. They should have posted yesterday, so. All right. Here we
You
go.
should tell them, if they're not posted, Kevin's gonna have to use the only one that is.
I don't know if, yeah. No comment. All right. So, how do we make, sorry about that. I told everybody to post their files yesterday to the network, and then everybody, of course, forgot and left. Anyway. So let's talk about how we create a sheet file, right? So we have these 3 base files that we've generated. We generated them by opening up our template, drawing them dimensionally correct, right? We've essentially established kind of an architectural template with these. And now it's time to create a sheet and Xref them all together, okay? So I am going to create a sheet is the same process every single time. And it's actually very easy. There's 2 ways you can do it. If you have kept up on your drawing template, okay, the one that we created at the very beginning of the semester where you add layers and you add dimensions and all that good stuff, right? Everybody looks at each other like, anybody do that?
Oh, yeah.
You have been?
Oh, yeah.
Good, okay.
We were talking about that
Were
earlier.
you? Okay, good. It's really helpful, right?
Yeah, I just copy and paste everything in there now.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that because now you can use it to start your sheet file, okay? So if you have your drawing template updated, then you would open your drawing template, okay, as if you're going to start a brand new assignment. So let's pretend mine is here. It's called SB template. We all know mine doesn't have anything in it, but I'm going to open it up, and at least I have architectural unit set. I don't remember what I put in here. I might have, anyway. But I've opened my template, and the way that I'm going to generate a sheet is I'm just going to save this blank file. Okay, so File, Save As, and in my folder, right, where I've saved my base files, AutoCAD Project, Xref Practice, I'm going to name this AE, 201, or we'll do 101. Main level floor plan. Okay, save. All right, so now my file structure looks like this. I have my base files, and then I have my sheet file, right? And my sheet file is just it's a blank file, right? There's nothing in there except for your template work, okay? So I have my sheet file open here, all right? Now, if you haven't kept up on your template file and we're here and you want to practice this, really you could just click on New Drawing, and just this this drawing that opens up, right? Just make sure you're in the right units, and you could use that as your sheet file, okay? But I'm going to close that out for now. All right, so I have my main level floor plan sheet, and now it's time for me to Xref in the drawings that I want to use, okay? And to do that, I'm going to go to, I have the insert menu here, okay? I have a reference tool palette here, all right, which I don't really honestly use very much. I don't tend to use this tool palette very much. What I end up using to add my Xrefs is the Xref dialog box. So if you type XR at the command line, enter, this little tool palette pops up. The docket right there. What I like about this is that it gives me a visual list of all the Xrefs that I have attached here, okay? So there's a few things in here that we want to look at. The first thing here is that I have an attach button, right? And if I drop down, I have a bunch of different things that I can attach, okay? I have a refresh button, right? Refresh, reload, okay? We're not going to worry about those two. Down here under my file references, okay, this file, if I click on it, this is my file that's open. It's a blue and yellow AutoCAD icon. Let's open this up a little. It shows me it's open, that how big the size is, that it's a current file, and the day that it was probably last saved actually. 8/47. Yep. So the date that it was, that might actually be the day it was generated. So either generated or last saved. You'll also see information down here. Okay, so you see the name of the file we have open. It's opened, size, type, date, and then where the file is found at on my computer, right? Again, AutoCAD is very path specific. So it recognizes where this file is saved. It's saved on my computer, the C drive, under S. Brady username, desktop, right, AutoCAD projects, and then the name of the file. Okay, so it knows where it's at, okay? So what I want to do now, just to clarify, right, I've created my sheet file. I want to Xref in one of these base files so that I can use it to do something in here, right? And I think I'm going to bring in my site plan first, okay? So to attach an Xref, and honestly, when I remember learning this in school, and I remember thinking, is that it? Is that all you do, right? You just attach it and it's there, and like that, you know, yeah, that's it. That's all you do, you know. We create the sheet file, we save the Xref, or we attach the Xref, and really that's kind of all there is to Xrefing, right? Of course, we have more work that has to be done, right? So you have to add the sheet specific work, but you know, the actual process of Xrefing is not very difficult, okay? So to Xref something, I click on attach, and I choose what type of file I'm going to attach. You'll also notice we can attach images and PDF files, right? Super helpful, hint, hint, for other things that you potentially could be doing in your careers. I click on attach drawing. I'm going to browse to wherever I have my base file that I want to Xref in. So I go to AutoCAD project, I go to Xref practice, I go to roof plan, I click on it because that's the one I want to Xref. I hit open, and now I have, again, here's another, you know, dialog box I have to define. So I've selected the file I want to attach. You'll notice that it does say attachment, right? So it's being paper clipped onto the file I have open, right? It's not being inserted. For my scale, I want this left blank. For my insertion point, I want that left, for now, blank. For my path type, we're going to choose no path for now. Rotation will be blank. Inches for my units and a factor of 1, and I'm going to hit OK. Right? So attachment, blank, 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 no path.
What is the no path? What is that?
The no path helps mitigate the idea that these are so path specific.
Okay.
So in theory, because this doesn't always work, when you choose no path, the link to the original file is somewhat broken in that if you move your sheet file, AutoCAD might still be able to go out and find where that original file is, right?
Okay.
But it doesn't always work, right? Sometimes it does, So we choose it, but in general, you still have to be aware that it might not work. I'm gonna hit OK. And you look here and immediately, this is kind of the #1 biggest error and question I get. Everyone always says, hey, I Xref'd that file in and it's not on my screen, I don't see it. I look over here and I do see the Xref, right? Oh, I get a little hint of it down there. Let's, whoop, right? Pretend it's not there. I do see my Xref right there, so I see that I have my main file, which is my sheet file. I see that I've now paper clipped a file to it, but where is it, right? Well, zoom extents is really essentially what I wanted to get at. It's there, right? If you see your file in your tool palette here, roof, it's in your drawing, right? So there is my file, right? It brings it in at 0.00, so it inserted at the origin, right? Let's look at this Xref and let's look at some of its properties. Okay, #1, when I click on the Xref, it's all glued together. So immediately I look at it and I think it's a block. Well, it does somewhat function like a block in AutoCAD, right? But as opposed to it's different from a block in that it's not inserted. Blocks are inserted, Xrefs are attached, right? So you don't have to do this if you're following along, but if I wanted to, I could click on this Xref, I could right click and I could choose detach, and it's gone, right? So I'm gonna undo that. I might not be able to undo that one. Oh no, there we go, okay. Like I might have to reattach. But I can detach it, right? So it is all glued together just like a block, okay? If I, bless you, bless you. It is real-time recording, right? But if I move it, if I rotate it, if I copy it, right, then it's all going to move as one piece, okay? Now, let's look at its layers, right? I said Xrefs remain separate from the file, essentially, that they're attached to. So if I click on Layer Properties, right, I do notice that I have kind of a weird-looking layer down here. It has a prefix on it, and it's grayed out, right? And that prefix is the same name as my Xref, right? So that indicates to me that this is a layer from the Xref external reference, the Xref, and that it has now been Xref'd or attached to, or sorry, no, let me take that back, and that the layer is called A-roof. So in this current file, you may have a layer called A-roof, right? So I'm going to click on New Layer, right? I could type A-roof, right? I could have a current layer with A-roof name, okay? And I can also have a Xref layer with the same name. I can have the two layers with the same name because one is in an Xref and one is in the actual file, okay? If you guys haven't noticed, you can't name layers the same thing. Have you noticed that, right? So maybe that's my point with that, right? So I know one is in the file and one is attached to the Xref, okay? The layers still have all of the same visual properties and layer properties that any other layer has. So I can visually turn them on or off. I can lock them, right? I can make them non-printable. I can change the color of the layer, which doesn't really matter very much. We're going to leave the line type, line weight, all those things alone. But essentially, everything is the same except for we do notice that that is an Xref layer, okay? This is new. Looks like they give you a little visual indication over here as well, right? So I get a little paper clipped thing right there, right, to show that it's there. Yep.
How did you open up the layers just for the attachment?
I didn't. I just opened up the layer properties dialog box and all of them will be there. Every layer for any Xref attached and in the current file will show up in this list.
Okay, I found it.
Yeah, yep.
I don't see.
Why does your layers property button have a little orange circle on it?
I think it's because it's, yeah.
Oh,
They're saying, hey, in 2018, we have some new stuff in here.
I see.
Yeah. And I'd actually, now that you say that, I wonder how I get rid of it. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. But probably has a new feature from 2017. So if I were to Xref, a bunch of different things in here, which you can Xref, you know, several different items into here, then all of their layers would come in, right? And they'd all have a prefix, and they would all show up in the layer dialog box. Okay. All right, so our layers look different. I have my Xref in here, looks pretty good, right? I can use this roof plan now to do sheet specific work, right? So for example, if I wanted to use the line command, I'm going to change to my roof layer. If I wanted to use my line command, you know, to maybe show, or let's do a P line. I want to show the building underneath this project. I'm just going to outline this, right? I can use this. You can see I can snap to it, right? I'm just going to do an outline here. Oop. Offset, let's do 3 feet. So I can offset it, I could draw things on it, I could hatch, right, BH, right? I could add all of that detail that is specific to this sheet, right? I could add keynotes or leaders, right? I can add dimensions onto this. So if this, in this file, you know, I come in here, I want to annotate, I want to add dimensions, I could add dimensions, I could add text, all that good stuff. Now, what is kind of the best part about this is that, you know, I have AE 101 open. I'm going to close that out and save it. Yes. The best part about this is that I was able to create that sheet, you know, perform work in there, use the roof as a template, but essentially the roof remained unchanged, right? So I was able to hatch and do offsets and do sheet specific things that were appropriate to only that file, and it leaves this clean of all of that, right? So when you're drawing these template files, I guess you want to think, what is kind of the bare minimum that I need in here to show, you know, where the roof goes? And then I will add specific detail to the sheet that's appropriate, okay? What happens if, you know, I have this main level file open and I need to make a change to the roof? Maybe I need to take this area over here and stretch it out, okay? Well, if I do S for stretch and I go like this and I stretch, it only grabs the information that's in my file, right? The Xref is kind of self-contained and locked essentially at this point. So in order for me to be able to make changes to this, I think for now there are a few other ways you can go about it, but for now the easiest way for you all to kind of get your head around this, I think, is to close out of the file you're in, save it, go back and open up your base file, so roof, open up the template file. Hold on, I need to do something because it's not going to allow me to save it because it's write protected. There we go. Okay. I'm going to stretch out this area, right? We'll stretch it out so we significantly can see the changes. S for stretch, we'll bring this area. Nice big gigantic house, right? This is going to be awful. Okay, stretch that out. Right, and maybe we add some skylights, right? I'll just make these kind of weird. We'll add a couple of circular. Is anybody in here your construction management? Is that who's? No, I keep thinking that's but it's okay.
Yes, it's his name.
Boyd doesn't like skylights, but he doesn't mind solo tubes, and so put some.
Cool, those
The solo tubes, yeah.
Solo tubes, they're really cool.
They have them at Nexus. You saw that, right? Yeah, they put out a lot of light. They are really cool. I just think it's funny he'll put a solo tube in, but not a skylight. So we put a few solo tubes for Boyd, and then we've got our skylights here. We've made our changes. Looks pretty good, right? I'm going to save it. So save, right? I'm going to close it out. And now when I reopen my sheet file, all of those changes have been made. Okay. I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to open up that base file. So I have this CAD file open, and I also have this CAD file open, right? I'm going to cheat a little just so that you can see what would happen if I change this, right? Somebody's working in the base file because they went and met with the client and they know what changes need to be made, right? So they're over here working away saying, oh, the roof needs to shrink back in, way too big, we'll take that back. whatever we do, right? They think, okay, that's great, we're done. So they save it and they close it out, and you're working over here in the main level floor plan or whatever it's called, and it says, hey, AutoCAD gives you a notification. Somebody has changed that original base file. A reference file is changed and may need reloading. So if I click on this blue icon right here, right, the blue text on the icon, click, you see how immediately my floor plan updates, right? If I had missed that bubble, like I closed out on accident or hit escape and it went away. Another way that I can reload the Xref, let me undo that in fact. You see here it says, hey, wait a minute, needs attention. So something is happening with this Xref, right? So if I missed that bubble and wasn't able to update through there, I could come over here to the roof plan. I could right click on reload, and it updates it. Okay, so I get a little warning and I have to reload it from there. Okay. So what if I want to Xref another file in, right? I could just come over here to external references, click, attach drawing, okay, choose the site plan, hit open, hit OK, right? And there's my site plan. M for move, and there we go. Okay. This site plan file, again, it looks kind of like a block, right? It's all self-contained, it's all one piece. If I open up my layer manager here, right, I go to layer properties. Oh boy. I'm getting some graphic, shoot. AutoCAD is the worst with, well, they're there. Anyway. You see, let me see if I pull it onto my other screen and back. Maybe that, nope. Nope.
I'm actually kind of glad to see your screen doing that. Mine does it all the time.
Does yours do that?
My laptop does it all the time.
Yeah, they are there. It doesn't help out, right? But they are there. You may need to just like reboot, you know. But essentially, I just want to show you all of the layers for this object. This Xref would come in, right? All right, so we've got our files. They look great, right? I'm going to grab this. I'm going to hit M for move, and I'm going to, you know, move it. My house barely fits on there now. Isn't it? There you go, right? And now I want to bring in my trees. This will be part of your assignment that you'll do, right? Attach drawing, trees, open, right? I'm going to hit OK here. I got my trees, and I've moved all these things. Yours will all nicely Xref together. Jeff has made them so that they are very wonderful. The trees are in the wrong place. Oh, okay, maybe I should move some of these trees, right? Okay, but so I close out of this drawing. Close, save, yes. And I'm going to open up my tree file. Right, this is a really, I mean, it's an easy system to manipulate, right? I can move these out. M for move. M for move. Right, M for move, because we know they're going to be in the way. Copy, and I'm just going to copy a bunch of these, adding more to our budget for this project, right?
So I guess my only question is to go in and move something like the trees, it'd be nice to see what else you're working with.
Right.
Could you also Xref that into your file so you have a reference point?
Yes, you can. Yes. You're wanting to get ahead, and I don't want to, well, okay, I'll show you. I'll show you guys. If you get it, but, so it would be nice, right? Just like a block reference where you want to be able to use some of the other information around you to inform how you change a block, right? Well, let's open up our sheet file, okay? So I've created all those trees kind of, you know, not knowing where anything was, and it worked out just fine. But what happens if I do happen to want to use the information in here, right, to alter these trees? Well, I could open up the tree file and Xref the site into there, right, and use it as a reference, okay? I could also, and the reason I didn't want to bring this up is because I don't want you to get lost in it, but if you click on one of these Xref files here, right, do you see how we have edit reference in place up here? Click. So this is a roundabout, I'm going to hit OK. This is a roundabout way of opening the original file and editing it, but doing it kind of in place right here, okay?
I kind of like that.
It's nice. It is nice. just don't, I guess maybe just don't get lost in it. And I say that, and make sure that you do this, and then you don't open up another file, and complete this command first and then go about your business, right? Don't kind of open this up, look at it, open up a few other files. You have a kind of a chance to corrupt a few things or make things not work right if you don't perform this action, finish it, save it, and then move on, right? So once I'm done here, I can choose Save Changes. You'll see this edit reference is kind of highlighted with orange right here. Save Changes. Okay. It's just like a block reference, and that changes. Now, the nice thing about that is it translates back to the original file, right? So I'm altering the original file at the same time that I am updating it here, right? Because there's that path connection back and forth, okay? So everything looks pretty good. This is how I want it, right? It's all Xref together. These all look very nice and neat, right? One thing I forgot to say was, these Xref files, they also print, okay? So if I wanted to, right, or if I need to print, I can set them up on a sheet just like any other type of file. Their pen weights read, everything is exactly the same, right? The system works. So if I preview this, everything looks great. Okay, a couple of problems you might run into, right? These Xrefs, they're all self-contained, meaning their pen weights and their layers and everything inherent that makes them readable and their shape is all contained in their original file, the Xref file, right? Now, that means that when you X-reference them into a second sheet file, okay, they come in, they look like a block. They don't function, well, they function like a block in that they come in on the current layer, okay? So this is on a roof, right? Obviously, that's a blue layer, and these are all remaining green, so their line weights are maintained, right? They maintain integrity. But what's different about an Xref than a block is that a block, when you insert it into a drawing, it takes on the properties of the layer it's been inserted on, okay? And Xrefs don't do that. They maintain their independence, essentially, right? That's why they bring their layers in with them. They're separate, but they maintain their layers, okay? So, it doesn't really matter what layer this Xref is on because, and what color that layer is, because it's going to maintain its independence, essentially, okay? What does matter is that if I accidentally bring this Xref in and it's on viewport, right? What do you think will happen? You panic. Where are my trees? Right? So none of the layer properties will override what's in the Xref, but if you insert it on a non-printable layer, it won't print. Okay? And that's kind of really tricky because the def points layer can be default sometimes, right? So you bring it in and you don't notice it's gone on to def points, right? And it doesn't print and you panic. Or it goes on the viewport layer or whatever, right? But if it comes in on a non-printable layer, then it won't print, okay? So kind of my best practice for Xrefs, if my layer thing was working, I'm gonna click New. I like to create an Xref layer, right? And when I bring Xrefs in, I just pop them on that layer so that I know that, they're gonna print. There's no problem with any of that, right? Because that's kind of, if I were to pick number 2 problem with Xrefs for beginning students, number 1, you don't recognize maybe it comes in and it's not on your screen, panic, right? Number 2, you bring it in and it successfully comes in, but then it won't print, and it's because of the layers, right? So
you would choose that Xref layer and then bring it in.
Right, yes. Or you could select the Xref and put it on that after the fact as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And it doesn't really matter the color of the layer because it's not going to override anything in your Xref, but just create a layer called Xrefs. Okay, so, make sure that, things come in, they're on the right layer, put them in the correct place. Couple more things about Xrefs. Number 1, I want to talk about if they detach, how you bring them back and what that looks like. And then number 2, visually. We look at these on the screen visually. And if I were to draw some, well, let's pick a different color. Let's pick, we'll create a new layer. Oh boy. Maybe there we go. Okay. That was a good guess. Okay. So when I create a new layer that's yellow and I draw around that Xref, do you see how my current layer, or the new layer is brighter than that Xref, right? There's a setting in, let me show you. I'm going to delete that. So if I have my Xref here, if I go to the Insert tool palette, and I come over here to my references, which I can attach a reference from here as well, but I feel like this is probably easier for you. If I click on this little flyout, well, that's odd. Where is it? Oh, this, never mind. Wrong little flyout. Like, I know it's there. Okay, so that little flyout does not, anyway. Okay, so I want to go to the down menu here, right? We have Xref fading. So if I go like that, you see how it brightens? And if I slide it the other direction, you see how it fades? Okay. This is not going to interfere with how it prints, okay? So if you're worried about, you know, oh, it's very, very faded, it's going to print faded, it's not going to. The pen weights will still control. But what's nice about having it faded is that when I draw new lines, I can very clearly see that new work, right? So I can tell where the Xref is and I can tell where the new work is, right? So if I was drawing like a reflected ceiling plan, I would come in here, use this, you know, offset it, you know, this is on a roof obviously, but I would start drawing my framework and draw a bunch of stuff, right? And I could look at it and say, oh, that's the Xref, great. Oh, that's the new work, okay. But some people don't like that. It's just personal preference, honestly. I like it a little faded, but when it gets too faded, I'm squinty, right? I don't like that. And so I tend to like it just a tiny bit brighter so that I can really see it on my computer screen, right? But this is that control where you can change it. So you can pick how you want it to read. If you're presenting to a client, right? Of course, I joke about this all the time, but the client will say, is it supposed to be faded out like that? It doesn't look right, and you're gonna make sure to change that, you know? So if you're speaking with a client, it's probably best to have it brighter too. Anyway, so that's the visual thing that I wanted to talk about. The other thing I want to talk about is if your Xrefs disappear from your file, right? So they detach, essentially. And I'm going to try and mimic the error. Hopefully it will work. Like I said, when we Xref in these and we choose no path, that helps so that if something is moved, deleted, or renamed, that AutoCAD can somewhat recover and still find it. But it doesn't always work. So I'm going to close out of this file and I'm going to see if I can make an error happen. Okay, I'm going to call this trees that we don't like, right? And we're going to delete that one and we're going to move it back into here. Oh boy. Okay, so copy that, we'll paste it here, and we'll delete it, right? So I moved a few things, I renamed a few things. You know, and you're thinking, oh, I'm organizing, doing whatever, I'm going to close that out. Now it's time for me to work, so File, Open, and I go to find my sheet again, Main Level Floor Plan, Open, and it says, hey, wait a minute, some of your files cannot be found, right? So it does give you an error now. Back in the day, you had to figure it out. But now it'll say, hey, something is wrong, right? So one or more of your reference files could not be located or read. What would you like to do? And you can ignore it if you don't care and it doesn't matter, or you can choose open the external reference palette, which is open over here, and you can figure out what's going on, right? There's a couple of things we can do, right? So you saw that I renamed the tree file, right? If I like the new name and I don't want to change it, I can reattach the Xref, okay? So I can click on this X trees, attach drawing, or actually, sorry. I'm afraid I'm going to reattach a new one, which would be okay as well. What I want to really do is reroute this one, right? So I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose attach. I know it sounds like the same thing, but I think by right clicking I get a different result. I'm just trying to remember. I browse to where I have the new file, trees that we don't like. I'm going to hit open. Okay. Oh, still, it still added a new one, and that's okay though. So it brought in that new file. Okay, so I can reattach it. And then to get rid of this old one, right click and detach. It's not doing anything, it's not hurting anything, but you know, you look at it, clutters up your file structure. I don't like it, right? So we get rid of things that we don't need. So there's that one, trees that we don't like. Okay. Another thing I could have done to fix this one is I could have just renamed trees. So I could have taken off that suffix that I added, and AutoCAD then would recognize that previous name and it would reattach. Okay. What I'm actually trying to find too, so I still have the site plan file that is missing. Well, it didn't give me the error. A lot of times, if all of the Xrefs have detached, when you open up a file like this, it will just have a long string of text and no Xref. And that string of text is basically the path where it was looking for that Xref, right? It's like the image not found text, right? In place of an image you put in a project. But you'll have a long string of text, and that's indicating that your Xrefs have detached, okay? So site plan not found. I could, go back to my desktop and I could put that file back into the project file, AutoCAD. There's my X site plan. That's the one that's detached, right? I moved it. If I put it back where it should have been in the first place, and then I reload. Oh, it's still not finding it. Reload all references. There we go. Now AutoCAD found it, right? I only had to put the file back where it was. So if you delete it, put it back. If you rename it back to the original file. If you move it, put it back in the same place. Or, with all of these options, you can always choose to reattach it, okay? And you can go find it again and put it back in where you wanted it to go.
That sounds like it could be very cumbersome.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's so tricky. It's a good system, right? In that if you have a lot of files, it's great when you're using AutoCAD. It's the best system to use for AutoCAD in this situation, right? But it's bad in that it's really delicate almost, right? There's this balance where if and you're working with 80 people maybe at a time, right? There's a good chance somebody's going to rename something, accidentally delete it or move it. And you're like, who did that? Where did it go? I was there yesterday, At an office my husband worked at one time, the receptionist decided she didn't like the name of their server. So she renamed their entire server. So it was like project file, and she wanted to put the name of the firm in it, PPA file firm, or project file. So she named the whole thing. Every Xref for like 20 years detached. And everybody was panicking, what's happening? It was like, rename the file, oh, okay. Which is easily fixed. You can name it back, but then every time you open that, you have to make sure it's all been reloaded, right? Anyway, kind of a little panic.
So is there a way to set it so if it does break that connection that it's still in your drawing?
So you can bind it. So at the end of a project, right, if you know that, you're kind of done editing, there will never be any changes, and you want to break that path, you can right click on your Xref and choose bind. Okay, so under X, the site plan, I bind. I'm going to bind it. I hit OK. And now that Xref is gone and it's been essentially inserted into your file.
Got it.
Yeah, so it stays there. So that's kind of like the last step usually on a project that we will do, is that we'll bind all the Xrefs when we're all done.
Can you unbind them if you need to?
No.
That's what I was
So
going
it's
to
done.
ask.
It's done.
So that's permanent.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess you could Xref in again if it's been updated and.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, you could do that.
So you Xref it in again, change it, and then rebind it. Or bind it again.
Yeah, bind it again if you don't want that connection. Yeah. Or you could just alter this, what you
Right.
have in there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But I was
essentially.
thinking if someone else altered it.
Oh,
you could
yeah.
Still bring that in.
You can.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. All right. One more thing on this topic and we'll stop, I promise. This is kind of a heavy topic, and I think it's not really difficult to do, but it's when, again, this is best used in an office where you have kind of, 5, 6 or more people working, and you're file sharing, and people are doing, going out and making changes, and people are in office working. This works really well, right? When it's 1 or 2 people, it seems almost, I felt like I was going in circles a little bit. Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense. I might as well just open the main file and make the changes and don't worry about it, correlating back. But the system does work, okay? The way that you are going to work with regard to your final project, okay, is that you are going to, for your final, you have a project you're going to do, but what you're going to do is you're going to create one kind of main file. We'll call this the main file, all right? And this is going to be, we'll call it maybe the main sheet file, all right? And the way that your final is going to work is you're going to create all of these Xrefs out here, right? So this one will be something like a floor plan, a site plan, an elevation, okay? And you're going to Xref every single one of those into this main sheet file, okay? So you generate these, you draw this one, close and save, draw, close and save, draw, close and save, draw, close and save. You're going to Xref those into one sheet file that you generate, okay? And so essentially what you'll have on your final project is you will have a bunch of drawings. So, you'll have like a floor plan right there, and you'll have a site detail over here, and then you'll have an elevation over here, okay? So with your final, you're not necessarily going to have all these drawings that are the same and line up. You'll have 3 or 4 or 5 different types of drawings all in the same file. And you're going to Xref them in so that if you make changes to the original, then, it updates. But what is also nice about this system is that I can add a few more tabs down here, right? And I could, rename this one floor plan. And I could name this one elevation, right? And I could name that, I could name that one site details, right? And so what I could do here is I could add my floor plan here. And I've got my floor plan here. Click, click, right? And I have my elevation here. Click, click. And there's my it's not really an elevation, right? But there's my elevation, right? And I have my site details. And there's my site details, right? So what is kind of nice about this system is that I can create these tabs, and essentially I'm generating an entire set of drawings from one file, right? Using the Xref system, which works, okay? But that is essentially going to be your final. Your assignment, let's open up Canvas here. Oh, good. Oh, good. Thomas sent his files. You can always count on Thomas. Okay, let's see. Your assignment, you're going to have one Xref assignment for now, and then you'll really kind of practice your skills on your final, which I will assign next week, probably on Monday. It is exciting. You'll have a good drawing set by the time you're done. So you are going to, let's see, Xref, you're going to do this one right here. So building section, page 2-54. Don't worry, I'll get to that. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be given some drawings, and I put them in the assignment just in case. These are on CAD Common if you want to grab them, right? But you're going to be given some drawings, and they will open them up so you can look at them. All right, so this is what they look like. And essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a sheet. So opening up your template, file, save as, name it whatever the assignment calls for. And then you're going to Xref these drawings into that file, okay? And you're given those drawings, so you don't actually have to draw them. But you're going to Xref those files into this drawing. You're going to create a paper space layout. You're going to insert your title block into your paper space layout, and then you're going to create a paper space layout and print these, right? So it looks daunting because there's some complicated drawings going in here, right? But you don't have to draw those. You're just plopping them in there, making them look the way they should, okay? But that will be the assignment that you're going to be working on, and then like I said, you're going to, for your final project, you're going to be really using your skills Xrefing, right? Your final project, it will be assigned on Monday, and the way that this class has kind of worked forever, honestly, is that after the final project is assigned, you basically have lab time to work on it for about 4 weeks. And there's quite a few drawings you have to generate, right? So it's going to be a test of your skills. You'll have 2 floor plans to draw. You'll have an elevation, an interior elevation, which we'll talk about on Wednesday. You'll have a couple of details. You'll have a cover sheet. And I think there's one more drawing that you have to generate. It's all going to be, I mean, you'll be given dimensions and all that good stuff, right? You just copy it essentially. Not that that is not time consuming, right? Because it is. But essentially, after I assign the project, you know, it's open lab time, right? So I'm not going to be having lectures or anything like that. You'll be here to work. The way that Jeff used to run it and he developed the class was he would not allow any questions, period. He kind of essentially made it like a take-home exam project deal. I'm not quite that strict about it, right? His idea was that it's a test of your skills and I want to make sure you know how to do it, but I don't want you to get stuck, you know, and not be able to move forward. So I say let's just keep questions minimal, you know, so I'll clarify and help you out if you need it. But after that point, it's kind of, you know, try it on your own first, and then if you completely get stuck, can't move forward, I'll help you out type thing. But essentially you will have kind of the rest of the semester just to work in class and finish your final project. So it's exciting, right? it's I can't believe it's already the end of the semester.
When are we starting to have